This is episode 184 of the Gold Squadron podcast. I'm your host, Dion Morales, and today I'm joined by Marcel Manzano.
Wow, you pronounced that better than you pronounce a European surname. Congratulations.
You're welcome. Will, all we need is just a little patience. Hakewood.
We're going to come together just fine.
And Ryan, the hive mind, Staniszewski.
Network calculations are back on the menu in full.
We also have two guests today, Gregory Albright and Jonathan Lundy. So before we jump into our main...
For those listening on the podcast and not tuning in on YouTube or stream, they waved hello.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Hello.
Hello.
Perfect, Marcel. Thank you.
This is great radio.
Announcements and news today. First, if you're not aware, we actually are doing a programming change for our Saturday streams. We're actually going to be switching from evenings for our Gold Squadron Flight Club streams to the morning. I'm trying to lock down the exact time, but we should be live by 10 a.m. Central, but more likely actually starting around 9 a.m. Central. With this, I'm hoping to do a couple of things. First, I want to be able to get more interaction with our European community because I want to get more of them involved in the Gold Squadron Flight Club weekends. And then also, it gives us opportunity to integrate some content into smaller tournaments that we join in, more kind of like Gold Squadron plays, and being able to get an inside look to our minds. This last weekend, I played in a small tournament here that was hosted by 312 Squadron, and I streamed all of my games playing, and I talked to you guys through my thought process, went 3-1 in that tournament, and had a good time. So hopefully those of you who did watch live, you enjoyed it, and we can continue bringing you that those Saturday morning X-Wing. Most of you who watch were in the age of Saturday morning cartoons. We're just replacing that now with Gold Squadron. Now, next thing, gentlemen, I have some amazing news. So, product endorsements are really important. Would you guys agree? Right? Like endorsements from people that you respect.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, I'm proud to announce officially today that Manscaped.com is now officially endorsed by Mrs. Gold Squadron. Okay? It's official. I needed legal permission. We went through the talks. We went through experimentation. We just had to make sure that everything was good to go. It is approved. Okay? So, want to remind you that today's podcast is sponsored by Manscaped.com. Get 20% off and free worldwide shipping and use code GSP at Manscaped.com. All right. We're going to jump into our first...
No, not yet.
What? What?
There's 56 people listening, and by the time this is done, there'll be over 1,000 that's out on YouTube.
Right.
I want to see 1,000 memes out there. Of Miss Gold Squadron approved. Make it happen.
Just crop that. You know what? I'll ask Devin and see if she will allow me to just put out the PNG of just that. Of just that symbol, and we can slap Mrs. GSP approved. And you know what? Grimwolf03 in the chat asks, should we make it an emote? And I think the answer is yes. We can make that happen for sure.
Do you think the goal is to get all of our significant others with a check mark across the bottom for our Manscaped promotion?
I think that's the goal. I think we got to go full 4 for 4. All right. All right. Now that we're done messing around right now. Today, our topic, we have our guests here, Gregory and Jonathan, and instead of me introducing the topic, I'm gonna put them on the hot seat because they reached out to me and I said this is cool. So, why are you here?
Yeah. So thanks for having us, Team Gold Squadron. We appreciate it. We are here. Jonathan and I are colleagues. We're PhD candidates in the same program. And we man, I've already run into the, I don't want to say too much, but Jonathan and I both love Star Wars. And Jonathan's dissertation, I'll let him talk more about it, treats collecting and toy collecting and fandoms. And I study analog games and their digital adaptations. And so X-Wing was really like a really neat just overlap of our two research interests. And so we started collaborating on this paper. And one thing led to another, and I found myself emailing Dion and the crew, and now here we are. So that's why we're here.
Yeah. So to kind of we're gonna get to all the middle stuff, but kind of to jump at the end, they actually put out a survey that was out on it's been on Reddit for a couple weeks now. But if you're in the chat right now, you type !survey. The link to the survey is in there, and essentially it's just gonna ask you about your experience with X-Wing and Star Wars, and just ask you some questions there. And now this is academic research, and one of the things they're going to try really hard not to do is they don't want to influence your answers. They just want to know stuff about you and about Star Wars and X-Wing. Can you guys maybe can you give us that surface level, if you if you have your research subject, your person who's filling out the survey, what is the minimum or the most you can say without influencing them? Kind of like, well, why are you studying this? Why is this important?
I guess I can take a stab at that since Greg did our intro, and just we're both students at Drexel University. I don't know if that's been said yet, but thought I'd give a plug to our and our program is called Communication, Culture, and Media. Just give a shout out to them. So what can I say about our survey without unduly our participants? Well, we have a couple different interests in this game. Greg did a good job of kind of talking about how our personal research interests overlap with it. However, the things that kind of we're interested in is like Star Wars fandom, and I think Greg and I are both interested in just people who are fans in general. Why people attach themselves to media properties or musicians or whatever. So we're kind of interested in that aspect of X-Wing because people seem to be kind of fans of it to the extent that they create a podcast, that they would help others with the game and create this really cool sense of community. And then the other aspect is sort of this new intersection between analog gaming, which has had a resurgence, kind of a renaissance, in the last 10, 15 years or whatnot, but also digitizing sort of that experience. I looked at some of your guys' great videos for some gameplay tournament stuff on your channel, and it was really cool to me to see, how you take that in-person physical gameplay, people to kind of like view, watch, critique, and learn. So we're kind of interested in people who are fans. So to what extent they are a Star Wars fan. We're also interested in what they like to do, what aspects they like of X-Wing. So, are people more into the gameplay itself? It seems to be that's, definitely a prominent aspect. But, are there some people out there who really like the miniatures, but just by themselves and maybe just collect them? I know in our recruiting, we found like several groups that were just about buying and selling, the miniatures either from X-Wing or Armada or some of those things. So that's kind of some of the surface level stuff. And then there are areas that we're looking at for connections to, where does Star Wars X-Wing sit in the Star Wars canon, right? So like there are canon ships that are sort of approved by Fantasy Flight Games and then also Lucasfilm and all that. But then there's a lot of modification that goes on. Some of the things that interest us are like when a non-canon ship that's popular with a fandom appears in on screen somewhere, or vice versa, or maybe something that's part of an ancillary media source ends up becoming sort of canonized either unofficially and then officially. Greg, do you want to add to that? I feel like I was kind of rambling a little bit.
No, totally. That's all good stuff. I think I would affirm all that and also zoom out and say, if you are listening right now and are filling out the survey, like, we're really interested in you and what you do and
yes,
how you feel. We can get a lot about X-Wing just from like reading the rules and playing the game ourselves and
Right.
assessing the physical objects. But we also need people who aren't us, the researchers, to weigh in. And so this is like, I don't know, this feels like wild to say as someone who is engaged in social science research, but like it doesn't happen without people. So
Right.
at the risk of sounding corny, we need to know what you do and what you like.
Yeah. What does X-Wing mean to you beyond just playing it as a game?
All right, cool.
This
let's
reminds me a little bit of you guys. Any of you guys seen Ren and Stimpy before?
Oh yes.
Or even know? It reminds me of that one episode in Ren and Stimpy where Ren is walking around. He's the hunter. He's like, "We're exploring the X-Wing Star Wars nerd in their natural environment, and here you will see the Wookiee Haywood in his Wookiee ship." I don't know. It's just like, I don't know.
Or Greg and I are part of a Star Trek Enterprise landing party, and we've landed on planet X-Wing. So maybe the mixed fandoms there a little bit. I don't know if that's unholy at this point.
I think I now need a Ren and Stimpy episode narrated by Marcel.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
All right, so to continue guiding this conversation, let's backtrack a little bit. And what is your guys' experience with X-Wing? How'd you guys? So Greg and Jonathan, like, are you guys X-Wing players? Have you ever played before? Is this just a game that you observed from the outside? Just kind of give us your relationship with the game.
Yeah, so I play and have played. I actually, sadly, I haven't bought into 2.0 yet. I've been a casual at-home player since the changeover, which makes me sad. But I still stay active on the boards, and I'm like waiting for the right moment whenever I have a windfall. When this academic research makes me rich, I'll buy into 2.0. But yeah, I've been playing 1.0 since probably 2014. I never played competitively, but I would hang out. I lived in Harrisburg, PA at the time. Shout out to the game table in Mechanicsburg. I think Kappa Squadron is the name of the group there, but it was a long time ago. Anyway, I hung out with some folks who played competitively, and I played with them on a pretty regular basis. I would put my minis in a little padded box in my backpack and bike across the river to the shop. But yeah, so I've played the game for a while and try and stay in touch with what's going on in the scene, just because it's such an interesting game, and all these theoretical aspects Jonathan's talking about have been really interesting to me, even as I've enjoyed it as a player and a fan.
Yeah, so I am less than a noob. I have never played the game myself. I've been aware of it as a Star Wars fan, and I used to actually work at a store called Hastings Entertainment. It was sort of like a mix of like Sam Goody music and Blockbuster Video and Hot Topic, if you could like combine all those three things. So we rented and sold all types of media, books, film, television, and then they slowly expanded to other things as that market sort of contracted and went to more streaming. So we started getting a lot of different games and action figures and all kinds of stuff in there. So I remember when Fantasy Flight put that out, and also the Armada. I remember seeing those and thinking they were cool, just from kind of a hardcore Star Wars fan perspective. But I haven't played it myself. But I've actually like gone online and watched people play, and particularly since Greg and I kind of came up with this idea about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago.
All right, so this is something that's been cooking for a while. You guys have been keeping your eye on X-Wing and seeing how it can what research you wanted to do and parse from the community. All right, pretty cool. So let's go back to something you said. You said board games. In recent history, I don't want to throw out a figure because I don't know, but I would agree that it seems like tabletop games of different kinds have kind of resurged, and of course then now we have COVID, which I think is going to make an interesting twist in your guys' research, because
Right.
it added a curveball for you guys. So and how it has and will continue to affect people playing these games. What are your thoughts, ideas on that? Why? I guess we'll start here. Why do you think board games in the last, and you could give whatever number this is, X number of years, have become more popular in. Let me restate this: accepted more in popular culture.
So this is my sort of area of expertise. This is what I'm writing my dissertation on, and I unfortunately have to do the thing that people hate academics for, which is to say, there's really a lot of theories out there, and I can't land on one of them because I haven't done enough reading or research. But I will, for the sake of speculation, I will speculate. But this is me hedging so that people who listen to this podcast in the future don't then come at me and say, you didn't back that up with any data.
Speculation warning right here,
That's
everybody.
right. Thank you.
Inserted.
So that when my dissertation committee hears this, they don't say, "What were you doing?" I think there's a sort of ecological approach to this notion that like screened media, even pre-COVID, had become so ubiquitous, and the tabletop gaming renaissance. I view it, at least in my own life, at least, as a way to sort of get away from screens. That screen games, video games, are cool and interesting, but it's nice to stop looking at the screen when I've been working all day and have something fun to do that is completely, non-pixel related. So I would speculate that that's part of why there's been a board gaming renaissance. What about you, Jonathan? What do you agree?
Right,
disagree?
I wasn't sure if you're collecting your thoughts or not. So I mean, I haven't been an active player in board games as much, I think, as Greg, and my focus isn't on that as much as his is. But I grew up playing all kinds of different board games and whatnot. I think, if I had to just put a pulse on it, I mean, I remember hearing about board game cafes and those sort of things popping up maybe 10 plus years ago, kind of around that. Some of the theory, and I'll kind of hedge myself a little bit, kind of like what Greg did. A lot of the stuff that I've been reading, other scholars who know more about it, or at least have studied it longer than I have, some of the ideas that are popular are sort of things like, well, it's got a reaction to sort of so many screens, kind of like what Greg is talking about. So it's sort of this counter culture movement to always being on screens, right? It's like going back to that. I think there's also a little bit of hipsterism mixed into it originally in a lot of those places. It's like, oh, well, let's go back and play the original Monopoly or Risk, or whatever the kind of the classic games are. But I would also say that I don't think board games ever went away. I mean, they've continually, Hasbro, Parker Brothers have continually produced updated versions of all those different ones. I mean, I don't know how many different special Star Wars editions that they've done of Monopoly, but I'm guessing it's quite a few, probably one with each movie and Clone Wars and all the different animated iterations. So I don't think that board games have ever gone away, but I think that there is kind of an interesting resurgence that happened between maybe the last 5 or 10 years, where you started seeing it as a marketable phenomenon in culture, where you'd see these bar / analog cafes, or you could go and rent like a board game or some of those things. Part of it, I think, and this is a big part of my research when I look at vintage toy collectors, is nostalgia. I think there's just kind of a general, our average age, one of the little data points we can throw out for our survey here so far, our average age is about 36 years of the average game player, which kind of fits into both Greg and I sort of demographic, and most people that we know that like Star Wars or some of that kind of gaming activities. And I think, when you hit your late 20s, early 30s, start to get a little more discretionary income, you start maybe wanting to look back a little bit, maybe things feel a little bit stressful, maybe you have a lot more responsibilities. So you kind of reach for some of those things that made you feel good in the past, whether that be like an old toy or a board game.
Yeah, I know for myself, when I had more discretionary income, some of it also came from like my parents at the time could not, because of our finances, provide a certain toy. They couldn't. I didn't have access to a certain thing. It was like, well, I'm an adult now. If I want that thing, I can just buy. I'm in charge. I can buy it now. Yep. Like I remember the first time being in a store with my wife, and I saw something it was like a Star Wars helmet that I really, really liked, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And she goes, why don't you get it? I'm like, and I thought, I just like kind of stood there for a second. I was like, I don't know why you're right. Wait, you're right. And then I just went and bought it. Why? Because I liked it. I thought it looked cool and it made me happy. And that's why I did it. All right.
Yeah.
Now,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so my dissertation project, I'm looking at vintage toy collectors, so adults that collect toys, not adult toy collectors in the other sense. Right. So, in the majority of the, I'm a kid of the 80s. I was born in 81. So I was kind of one of those cusper generations. I've got a foot in Gen X, a foot in millennial. But I grew up on Saturday morning cartoons, after school cartoons, like kind of in that golden era of marketable cartoons, where basically they were 30-minute commercials for toy companies, even though we didn't all see them that way, right? We just loved Optimus Prime and Duke and She-Ra and whatever. And the toys were sort of just representations of those stories that we liked. But when I did another survey, about 800 plus people, and then I interviewed about 25 individuals, and they said very similar to what you said, Dion, about sort of that moment when you realize that you can kind of purchase those things that you weren't able to get as a kid, or maybe you'd lost as a kid. That's another common story that I heard told, is like, I came home from summer camp one year and my parents had sold all my toys in a yard sale. So now as an adult, like, I'm trying to kind of get them all back. And there's some really cool stories out there. Do you guys remember like the vintage G.I. Joe, Real American Hero line?
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody remember the giant USS Flag? It was like 7 feet long. It was this huge toy that like no kid could get on their own, but it was massive. But one of my survey participants or interviewees was talking about how he finally bought that, and then he kind of like regretted it when it was sitting on his table, because it was like, oh, what did I do? But he wasn't married, so that probably also played a factor in that.
It could. Now rolling it to X-Wing, you guys both hit on the fact that this game is interesting in the fact that it is. We've gotten data from different board game publishers saying that X-Wing and Warhammer flip between 1 and 2 for the best-selling miniatures games out there, right? Now, I've been on record several times saying that while I love the competitive scene of the game, and there are a lot of people that play, we also can't deny the fact that it is a Star Wars. They're Star Wars toys to some people,
right? And
they just look cool, right?
Oh, for sure. Greg, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that's why I bought in. Like I'm much more of a board game hobbyist than a miniatures wargaming hobbyist, in part because of the high barrier to entry in terms of like constructing and painting models, and so the like pre-painted, pre-constructed nature of X-Wing was just huge, and the fact that they look really good. Whenever I'm like trolling eBay to buy ship models, I always see someone who's intentionally or unintentionally, mischaracterized some like Micro Machines thing as an X-Wing model, and it's like exactly the same ship, exactly the same size scale, and it just looks so bad. And it's like, FFG has done a great job giving this game a really great toy factor and a really great visual appearance. I was thinking this might make it into the paper, probably not. I was thinking about how, in terms of the strict rules as written of the game, all of the mechanical game interactions work without the models. Yep. You could just put a piece of cardboard on with the pilot name and the ship initiative and all that stuff, and it would be a really bad game. And once you have the models on the table, not like in terms of gameplay, right, but just in terms of like the appeal, right? No one would be like, let me look at what is that cool game, right? As soon as you get those models on the table, everyone's like, I'll watch this for an hour. Cool.
Oh yeah, I mean we've talked about it quite a bit, where we've said that I got into the game because it was Star Wars and no other reason, and now we are we have a massive platform and really integrated into the community. But it all started because like, oh, that's a cool Star Wars game. My friend tried to use it as a gateway into other miniatures games, but I just stopped at X-Wing. I was like, oh, this is cool. We'll stay here.
Star Wars is such a freak phenomenon. I mean, what other franchise has a 40 plus year history of not just being a story? I mean, there's Tolkien, obviously, there's a ton of even longer history, but like, but even from its very inception, it was marketed in a way to make it collectible, right? From the toys and different things. I mean, actually, there was board game before there was even the Kenner line that came out, because they had production problems. But so I think that Star Wars is always unique in itself, and it's somewhat of an outlier in terms of how popular and how expansive and how it transcends different. You can slap Star Wars on pretty much anything, or use Star Wars characters to sell almost any product, and it's popular. But it's fascinating to me, like something like this, because I'm glad you guys brought that up, because I was always, that's one of the questions I kind of have that we're trying to answer with this survey is what role does the analog, the game piece, the materiality of the game itself play? And while I was watching some of the, you guys can articulate what was going on better than the, digital platforms that you guys have the videos of on YouTube, watching people play. I was curious, like, how many people enjoy this more than actually being there with the little game pieces and doing that? And at what point does it become a video game versus analog game?
I'll let my co-host ring in for that. I think it's a perfect time to hit them.
William the hipster, he should start first.
I choose to believe I'm playing on the real tabletop, so it's not a video game to me.
Yeah.
So the funny part about that question is this morning I literally started thinking during COVID in my spare time, I've been playing video games and I've been playing X-Wing on my computer video game. But it still feels like the tabletop game to me. It's just presented in a digital format. Yeah. But you could definitely say you're playing a video game straight up.
Yeah.
Marcel?
I think I'm playing more than I was in person, but that's only because I'm lazy and I hate the 30 minutes of taking everything out and the 45 minutes of cleaning up. I am the best cook if I don't have to clean up after myself. So I don't know. So I'm enjoying this, but I'm definitely missing not the game itself on the table, but missing the experience that you have with the people before and after the matches, like just the personal interaction is what I'm missing.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree on that. You could probably ask every one of these surveys if there's a question there that points towards interactions outside the game. I think everyone would answer that a high priority is when we go to these events. It's sure, the competitive aspect, the camaraderie at times of, rooting for another person as they keep going on. But man, just the night after a long day of games, just going out, finding a good place to eat and drink together. And then if you're in the next day, you wake up the next day and you play, or you have people rooting you on. It's all about the community that we all have together. And that's easily sure, we probably get on average a lot more games in now because all of it's online. You don't have to travel. You don't have to fight traffic. You don't have to. Most people who can work from home are working from home and could fit that in their schedule more easier. But I think people, even with the ability to get more games, people miss the human interaction and the camaraderie that it brings with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that Greg, you said that you didn't get to participate in any maybe major scale competitiveness, but you did have your local scene. But if you guys can come across videos of people just hanging out at X-Wing tournaments, I think it would be an interesting just kind of look into the community, because really what has driven the development of the game has been this competitive community where a lot of the same people will travel to different parts of the country, sometimes different parts of the world, just to play this Star Wars X-Wing miniatures game. And it's the community that has built around it is amazing. But then also we have, kind of linking another point you guys had made earlier, is board games as an escape from the screen, but now we are forced is probably a really aggressive word to say that, but by necessity, most of us are unable to play at a table. But at the same time, it's created opportunity because we recently had we called it the Galactic Championship, but we had a global scale championship that we just wrapped up in November. It was 20 something. I don't have the number up with me right now. It's 20 something different countries participate in this event, and it was absolutely amazing. And a good section of those people would never have been able to come to the quote-unquote official world championships. And we've even picked up players who've never played the game in person, have only played it digitally. I mean, this is some I'll let you guys jump in now, but it is interesting times.
Yeah, that's wild. That's the notion of someone jumping in to play the game digitally, having never played it on the table before, just boggles my mind. It's very, in a cool way, in a good way. I've been feeling some of what you guys are talking about with regards to the board gaming scene generally. I'm a part of a game design group here in Philly, and it's like, yeah, we've moved entirely to Tabletop Simulator and Discord. And it's like, on the one hand, it's good. It's like every game design group is now open to basically any game designer. And so, you can get reps in, you can play test every night of the week if you want. But it's also such a bummer because it's like, yeah, I don't know. I miss hanging out with the people and seeing people in person. And these notions you're talking about of like hanging out around the thing, and that brings so much depth and richness to the experience is huge. So I haven't been on Tabletop Simulator a lot recently because I just like miss seeing people and playtesting in person.
And I'm going to throw this back to you, Greg, just real quick. But Greg and I, when we originally conceived our research project here, we wanted to go and watch people play in person and actually have people play and tell us what they're thinking and kind of getting some of that feedback. And we had to adjust our project because of COVID. But you want to maybe talk about because you were doing that project too, right?
Yeah, totally. That impacted my dissertation research as well, where I'm going to do some sort of semi-ethnographic research on board game players, and I've had to pivot, and I think it has deepened the project. Now I'm talking about digital analog adaptation, which is a super interesting area of literature. But before, I was only going to study board games and watch people play games in the analog world, and of course now that's like not a safe option anymore. So I'm hoping to do some digital observations for my my dissertation, and then later on, once the vaccine's out and things are a little safer, do some in-person observations. But it's a wild time to have decided to get involved with like analog physical media, because it's like now all gone, at least temporarily.
Gone but not forgotten.
In our hearts.
Yeah.
Hopefully just for now. Marcel, you were going to
That's
say
right.
something?
I just realized something, Young.
What?
Like, I don't know. You just keep playing with my emotions. The only time we have guests, and you bring two of them on, and still I'm the only one without the ability to grow facial hair. I just realized this. Like, what is up, man? And then you get Manscaped out of all things. Like, yeah, I can grow hair there, but I can't show it. Like, dude.
That's a perfect time to remind you that today's podcast is brought to you by Manscaped.com. All right?
And that was not planned. That was purely organic.
That was 100% organic.
No, that was purely emotions. Dion is playing with my emotions. I swear to God.
Well, I will say that if it wasn't for COVID, I wouldn't have the beard that I do. I just I have no reason not to shave it right now.
Now, here's maybe another interesting a thought that came into my mind, and I'm not sure if this is a line of thinking in your guys' paper, so let me know if I have to back off from this point or not. But one of the things about playing this game and the different, and let's just talk about board games in general, is when we jump on Tabletop Simulator and we are playing a game, most of us, we are there to play the game, and that is our only purpose, right? It's like, hi, would you like to play a game? Yes. So we play the game. We're able to chat. But then you also have I'm going to call him the casual gamer, the person who jumps on and says, hey, we don't have to necessarily play with a clock. Let's just let's just play and wait till we all die, or you have the in person. I know, for instance, I had a group that I board gamed with a few years ago, where some of the people, like, they were, including myself, like, we're here to play the game. Right? We're here to play the game. We're focused on the game. But then you also had the more casual player who sat there on their phone the whole time, right? Or had conversations about stuff that was nothing to do with the game, and you had this like butting of heads sometimes. It was like, hey, we're not getting anything done in the game. Oh no, but I'm just here for social interaction. Like there's I find it really interesting, and that exists sometimes in X-Wing as well. There's different tiers of players. Any thoughts or lines of research involving that, maybe different personalities playing the game?
I'll let Jonathan take this one since I talked for a long time.
Yeah, no. So we didn't ask a lot of demographic questions. We tried to limit that as much as possible because we know like people kind of get annoyed with that, and also it just wasn't the focus of our research. But inevitably, every researcher who has done a project and they always want to add more questions after they've made the survey live, and because you're like, oh, I should have asked that question. Mm-hmm. And so, we asked some basic stuff about age, how long people have been playing, race, relational status, educational level, kind of some of that. But we didn't really measure personality stuff outside of those things, those kind of sentimental scoring that would relate to aspects of Star Wars fandom. So like how people feel about Star Wars, or how people feel or what they like about the game. And we did have a series of questions at the end of the survey, there are a series of questions at the end of the survey that ask open-ended questions about, what do you like about X-Wing? What's your favorite ship or faction, or some of those things that Greg was, more informed about than I was. I just kind of wrote them down. But we got some really cool responses in regards to sort of those open-ended things and what people do. In our analysis, I am hoping to kind of draw a better picture of sort of like who is playing and why they're there. Inherent in some of our questions are sort of motivating factors, but some of it's related to gameplay, some of it's related to the miniatures and the game pieces themselves. But we didn't ask a lot of questions necessarily. But and Greg, please jump in after I ask this to myself. But based off the limited data that I've seen so far, it seems like community is a really big driver for this group, in that the social interaction is one of the things that popped up when we asked those open-ended questions about why people like what they like about the game, right?
Yeah, totally. A lot of our answers were, well, I won't say that. I don't want to bias us, but yes, a lot of people talked about the community aspect of the game as something they really enjoyed, and I appreciated that. And I wanted to circle back a little bit to something Dion asked, since talking about like casual players versus competitive players. I think we are cognizant of the fact that because of where we are dropping this survey link and where we are recruiting from, we are getting a lot of the more sort of competitive, or at least competitively aware players. So I guess this is like an ask for any of you all. If you know friends who are casual players, please get them to our survey, because we're going to have to say in our write-up, in our publication, knock on wood, when we get published, that like we don't know a whole lot about the casual community, because there's not a place you can go on the internet that's like r/X-Wing TMG casuals only. If you're bothering to frequent a forum, you're probably a certain level of invested in this game, and so that's who we're going to get answering our survey. And that's not a problem, but it does sort of leave this question unanswered of like, what do the casual players think? And we don't really know.
Yeah, and related to that, one of the questions I had, I think I kind of already posted, is like, I actually, I don't remember who was talking before, but like, I actually want to meet the X-Wing player who doesn't like the game itself, but just like buys it for the miniatures and like puts them all around, and then like, kind of like keeps up with the game. That's kind of my more interested. Like, I'm interested in what people do with those pieces and kind of the material components of the game itself. Less so than Greg, who's more interested kind of in some of the gameplay aspects of it. Yeah, it's hard to capture every sort of demographic or every sort of type of player. But, I think originally in some of our drafts for our survey and our research protocol, we talked about how do we capture sort of the casual player, because I think we had a question or two about like, do you casually play and do you seriously play? But then we figured, kind of what Greg, to reiterate what he just said, the places we were recruiting, sort of the assumption is that if you're on a Facebook group for X-Wing gameplay, if you're on a podcast or on the subreddit, you probably have some level of intensity more than a casual player, but maybe not. Maybe people are just sort of lurkers. There's a wide variety, I think.
Like, I would say from talking about the more casuals, there's definitely some people in the community that have stated publicly, like, I'm only still here because of the people. Like, sure. They've created connections that they are unwilling to let go of. And the community that has come around this game has kept people in it, especially if you were used to traveling. Now, one thing I'm just personally curious about, and this is something that we won't know for some time, is when we start getting back to in-person play, the amount of time, the separation that those less invested people, less people who are less invested in the game, but more invested in the people, whether or not they're still going to come out. Like, yeah, I'm really curious about those people, because it will be noticed, because there is a very strong people have developed names. Like, when you look at a top 16, there are names that people notice repeatedly, and when those names start disappearing, even if they were, they're like, hey, I'm just here for the people, even though I'm good at the game, it's something that I don't want to see the names leave, but I'd be curious to see what happens when we get there.
When you were talking about that, I couldn't help but think about some of the conversations that are going around. My parents are fairly religious, and so they haven't been able to go to church, some of those things, and I know I'm not too far into that. No, but one of the concerns of churchgoers and churches in general in our country, now and all over the world, is like, a lot of people aren't coming right now, and are they going to come back? So it actually kind of like made me think of that conversation that's happening in other places as well in our society. Yes.
Oh, I realized. Sorry, I was muted on the outside. One of the things I realized is, talking about routine, is every Wednesday for the last X number of years, can't even remember how many now, I have gone to my local game store to play X-Wing with a community, with the same people over and over. And not having done that, I know, because I am Dion Morales of Gold Squadron, that I will be back, but I'm worried about my friends. It's interesting. And then on top of that, the reality is, some of those people, I only ever interacted with them and developed that relationship in person. And now that we're digital, I don't have an opportunity to interact with them as much. I'm interacting with other people more often, more people who were more digitally active, and it worries me. But it's also, I kind of find it interesting how the situation has kind of changed some of those things.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I want to do for our audience who are watching, if you guys have any questions, this is your chance. I'm going to start kind of bringing our conversation to a point here. I want to again stress that if you're watching live, ! Survey. The survey, honestly, I think you guys were generous saying 15 minutes. I think it's really only a 10-minute survey. It's pretty quick. It is a good. I would say I am sent a lot of surveys as a teacher, all right, by people who are researching. This is a nice, concise survey. So I want to say thank you to you guys for not writing a crappy survey, okay? So good job.
Thank you. That's actually a compliment in our circle. So
Yeah, tell our advisors of that we need some
right.
for that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, We could talk about it off air. Some of my pet peeves when I receive surveys, and you guys did a great job. So yeah, exclamation point survey. Make sure you guys fill it out, help them out. And if you're watching later on YouTube or listening, click the link in the description so you guys can open it up. I think you guys said you're going to keep it open for at least a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, we'll kind of leave it somewhat open ended.
All right, fantastic. So one of the things I want to close with, additionally, audience, if you guys have any questions for them, let's go ahead and ask your questions now. So first time caller in the chat asks, when do you expect to have results of the survey? How are you going to convey them? I know you said you're planning on being published. Are you guys willing to come back and kind of share some of your data with us?
Oh yeah, totally. We would be happy and honored to come back on the pod.
Yeah.
We don't, as we sort of indicated by, we're not sure when we're closing the survey. We're also not sure when we're going to have results processed by, but we're thinking probably spring. Academic stuff moves really slow, and we were hoping to get it published in an academic journal, and I'm sure if we have any leads on that when we come back on, we'll tell you about it. But that's an even slower process than processing the data.
Right, but what we can do is we can come and share, kind of the overall data before, it will take us a while to get published, so we're not going to wait to get published to share our information with you. Greg, did we want to share some of our current findings? I know that wasn't really asked, but do we want to wait, or because we have a few things we can share? Are you guys interested in that, or? Sure.
I mean, if you think it's related, go ahead, and it doesn't skew your results. We love data here. We love data. There's a bit of a meme around it. We'll hit you guys with that in a little bit, but you can go ahead.
Okay.
I also don't want to shortchange the chat folks, but we have found some interesting stuff already in our preliminary findings. So I'll let Jonathan take the lead on that.
I can just give a quick run through because I would love to hear more questions. So far we've had a total of 340 plus participants, and again we recruited from Facebook groups, Discord channels, the subreddit, and then the official FFG board. Average participant, I think I might have mentioned this early, has played a little bit over 4 years. So not, complete veterans, but some people with experience, which is nice. Average age was about 36 years. And then the majority of our participants identified as white or Caucasian, which isn't a surprise for anything related to sort of Star Wars or fandom. It seems to be I know that we all know that there's a wide demographic of people who love everything, but it seems like the people who always respond to surveys are of a certain ilk. So we encourage as wide of wide a range of opinions as possible. So help us out here. Around 78% were married or in a committed relationships, which kind of bucks some of those popular portrayals of gamers or nerds or fans or whatever you want to categorize yourself as. Well, fairly educated population. Nearly 90% of our participants so far have some post-high school education, with 30% having undergrad degrees and almost 30% having postgraduate degrees. In our survey, we initially asked a series of questions that kind of talked about just Star Wars. And what we're trying to do is build kind of a measure of Star Wars fandom. So how much of a fan you are of Star Wars going into it, and then relate that to different aspects of the game. And I'll give you one of our initial little findings, and then I'll pass it over to Greg, who maybe can talk about some of the more qualitative stuff here. But one of the things that we found so far is there's a positive relationship between sort of the level of people's fandom, so how hardcore of a Star Wars fan they are, and how many years that they have played the game. So as their hardcoreness goes up in Star Warsness, or however we want to say that, their years of gameplay also increase.
Yeah, totally. And Jonathan is more the quantitative expert of the two of us, although neither of us is super quant. But I was reading some of our open-ended answers and assessing themes, and just pulling out some of my favorite just moments from these answers. A favorite theme. So we had a question about what do people do with their miniatures when they're not playing the game? And there were a number of answers that said, try and keep them away from my kids so they don't break them. And there was a really similar number of people who said, oh, I let my kids play with them. So I thought that tension was wild, that people were like, no, and also other people were like, here you go, play with this. A lot of people said that the thing they do when they don't play the game with their minis is swoosh them through the air making pew pew noises, which is incredible. What else? Multiple people said they were going to make Christmas tree decorations, which I thought was really smart. Yeah, and then we had a question about favorite ships, factions, and I think there've been a couple like informal surveys on the subreddit about which factions people play. I didn't do any data analysis on these responses because they're open-ended, qualitative, but from a sort of soft first read or two, it seems like a lot of people play a lot of factions. There wasn't one faction jumping out as like, this is the one that everybody plays, which was cool. Seems to speak to the health of the meta of the game. I loved this is an open-ended sort of essay type question, as you'll see when you get to the survey. And some people didn't answer, which is fine. And some people just sort of put like Empire, Darth Vader. And some people wrote like whole novels. But my favorite answer of everything that I read was someone who just wrote 3 words in this essay answer, and they wrote Sith Interceptor, cool. That made me laugh so hard. Just like Sith Interceptor, cool.
Awesome, yeah, and there's a couple people in the chat just kind of bringing some of our audience interaction here who actually think that your guys' research could really help. It's actually pretty soon it's going to be AMG instead of FFG. It's moving over to Atomic Mass Games.
Greg and I were just talking about that beforehand.
Yeah, so I think this data could lead to some interesting choices, maybe just having more data in their decision making, because I know one thing, and this actually is going to be our topic next week, so a little bit of preview for people watching, is AMG doesn't have the historical experience and the bad times of version 1, okay, of 1.0. AMG doesn't have that. So one concern and one thing that we're going to be exploring next week is what are some pitfalls and mistakes that AMG, Atomic Mass Games, could fall into by not having that historical experience. And I think that your guys' information, your guys' data and research from a different point of view could also just help make some healthy decisions about the game. So I want to say thank you for your guys' research. I know that it's part of your degree, but I think it's interesting to see that we're very invested in the game, but 2 people who have some what I would consider light experience with the game think that our community and our game is interesting enough to study. So I think that's really cool.
Very interesting.
So are there any closing thoughts or any other little nuggets that you want to give our audience before we let you 2 gentlemen go for the night?
Greg, go ahead.
I don't have anything to like plug. I'm an academic, so I'm not like working on, well, that's not entirely true. I'm a game designer, but I don't have any big game titles to plug, but maybe in the future a publisher will pick up my stuff. Who knows? Anyway, I will leave you with Sith Interceptor cool as my sign off.
That's hard to follow up with. I just want to thank everybody, for having us on the show, but also all the players out there. You guys have a super cool community that has given me lots of pleasure to just study. And, as a longtime Star Wars fan, I'm always interested in meeting with and looking at from an academic angle, but also just sort of as something really fun and cool. And I think, in times like this, we just need as many diversions as we can. I'll give a shameless plug here. I do have a book chapter out in a new book, and I wouldn't mention this if I didn't think that somebody in the audience would actually be interested. But there's a book that came out just this year, just was published. It's called The Transmedia Franchise of Star Wars Television. So it's specifically looking at televised iterations of Star Wars, or the expansion of television through the expansion of the Star Wars franchise through television, going way back to things like the Christmas 78 holiday special and the much maligned Ewok Caravan of Courage and like some of those things, but up until the new, like, more popular series, right, with the Clone Wars, some of those things. So my chapter in there is about the enduring legacy of the Kenner Star Wars toy commercials that, for those of us of a certain age, we remember. And they sort of actually set the template for a lot of our modern day sort of particularly action figure commercials. So that's my shameless plug, and I'll leave it with that.
All right. And my closing question will likely be my hardest question of the night.
Please.
Why is this research? Why?
I mean, the easy answer is because scholarship, because we need to know things. But more to the point, I've been thinking about how to answer this question. In the little pre-chat, Dion told us he was going to hit us with this zinger, and I've been thinking about how to answer it without tipping too much of our hand about our theoretical constructs. And I will say that I think this research is important for me as a scholar of games, because the digital has sort of been the mainstream of game studies since its sort of inception as a discipline. Not a lot of people study board games and analog games and tabletop miniatures games, or if they do, they study them from perspectives that are almost sort of like agnostic to the fact that they're games. They sort of study them as like cultural artifacts, which is interesting, but is not like, there's a whole wealth of information and experience of playing really good, well-designed games, and game studies has had a hard time getting at it. And so I think by centering the analog, by studying a tabletop miniatures game, we're hoping to sort of open up to the game studies scholarly community this notion of like, hey, like the analog is cool too. Like digital will get you all the funding, but there's really, really interesting stuff happening here in the analog world, and we want to shine a light on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think to echo some of what Greg just said, is there seems to be I won't use the word bias, but there's a tendency for game studies and even fandom studies to look at the screen, or the digital versions, or even the, for my work, I look at what fans do, how they express their fandom. And a lot of it is centered around like things like fan fiction or cosplay, or, some of the more observable things. But I mean, the act of game playing continually, the ritualized coming together of a community or friends playing a game. I mean, I think that's an expression not only of like a franchise where a game like X-Wing is associated with Star Wars, but it's also an expression of the fandom of the game itself, regardless of sort of the content, even though you can't separate the two. I think ultimately it's important because it's important to everybody here, particularly enough to create a podcast about and have 3,000 plus listeners out there and viewers. Fandom isn't trivial. It's more visible than it used to be, and I think it's less stigmatized to some extent, but everybody's a fan of something, and everybody devotes their time, energy, and emotion to something. So why not something like Star Wars or X-Wing game? So I think it's important for academic reasons and some of the more specific things that Greg and I are interested in, but I think it's important because it's important to people.
All right. Well, thank you again, gentlemen, for joining us. I do have a request, though. Many people in the chat have pointed out that we've done you the favor of taking your survey. You guys need to play some X-Wing, okay? So if you guys need some tutorials, you let us know. We got stuff on the YouTube channel. You guys could watch there. And when you guys are ready to play, I think it'd be super interesting and also borderline hilarious to have YouTube face off on one of our Gold Squadron Flight Club nights. All right, so we do either Wednesday nights or Saturday mornings now, and have you guys face off against each other.
Oh, that'd be wild.
I'm game if Greg is.
All right, fantastic. Well, you guys can have a great night. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yep, thank you.
Guys.
Bye.
All right, so we're going to continue the show here and move on to our second topic here, and then we have our list of the week. But I think that I'm curious to see what comes of all this stuff. So you guys can go ahead, Greg and Jonathan. You guys can just leave the call. You guys are good.
Sorry. See you guys.
No worries.
Thanks again for having us. We appreciate it.
No problem.
All right.
That was the you don't have to go home.
but you can't stay here.
I was going to say, when you talked about the quality of the survey, I was going to be like, yeah, they need one of those like big like review quotes where it's like 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the survey. So here I didn't want to waste their time with this, but one of the biggest things I get annoyed with when I take surveys is when they lead with these giant like questions that would require paragraphs. I was like, don't do that to me. Ain't nobody got time for that. Give me concise, multiple choice questions, and then if you're gonna give me something, make it optional. If I have to write a paragraph and put it at the end. Okay, and that's it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful survey. So I'm curious to see. I know they had to be a little bit cagey because again, they don't want to sway the data. But take it, guys. I'm really curious, and I'm glad that we're developing a relationship with them because I want to know. I want to know this data. I think it's really interesting. Okay. So this question of the week that we got thrown is really interesting, and I did a lot of talking. So this is going to be all Ryan, Will, and Marcel, and Will's going to answer the question first. So the question comes from Ignatius and says, in order to answer this question, you kind of need to ignore Digital X-Wing, but I think it could be warranted as well. Here's the question. There's an endless debate of hyperspace versus extended. Extended is currently a format in which people are limited by the ships they can procure. So what you can buy or what you had. Obviously, most people who just started in second edition don't own K-Wings or Alpha class gunboats in person. The question here is there space for a third format in X-Wing? Hyperspace, which is what it is now, a curated list from 2.0 releases, the black boxes, with content that releases and rotates. Standard is his new suggested format, which would be everything that's been released in just 2.0 in the black boxes. And then extended would be all of it, conversion kit material, no ship or upgrade left behind. So what are your thoughts on that, Will?
When I first read through that, I thought it was really interesting. I hadn't really thought about it in that way, that at a certain point, we are going to have quite a bit of black box releases now that we're years into second edition. And I'm even trying to think of what was the last ship that got reprinted for second edition. Defenders?
I think
Z95?
Right.
To be clear, there's some people in the chat being like, oh, there are already alternate formats. We're talking about where the community seriously looks at them as competitive formats. Let's be clear. Okay?
Right, and even hyperspace was like, you kids, like your goofy list building restrictions for a long time. Like it really wasn't like accepted at first, and it was working as this kind of standard at first that they're describing. That it was just what you could buy in second edition, which I do think is interesting. But my opinion on it is that there wouldn't be, what do I want to say? There's no reason to make a hyperspace format like that. That maybe not no reason. I guess that now that you're having so many options, right? Hyperspace standard, extended, more options, the consistency of play is less. And what I mean by that is that going to the game store, right? Like, oh, well, I brought a hyperspace list, and someone's like, well, I only ever play extended. And I was like, man, I'm practicing for that standard tournament. Like, it is even more diversifying what the uniformity of X-Wing. What really has gotten people so much, no matter what your opinion of it is, that of this 200 points and 3 obstacles list building style. So the farther and farther you kind of get away from that standardization, I think it actually hurts the game. I do think it's an interesting idea. I would prefer to see something like that, and I do think. Maybe I'll ask this to you guys as we transition over. Ryan, do you think there'll be a ship that they'll never put in second edition? What ship would that be?
Never put in second edition. Ooh. Do I want to make enemies or no?
Yeah, make enemies, man. Call them out.
Oh, see,
I know what you're thinking.
The Wookiee gunship.
Hard to see.
Is
Really?
No. I'm going through my thought process. The Wookiee gunship is in Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the show. Let me go to Yasby. The gunship is nowhere to be seen for the gunboat.
Yeah, Gunboat, E-Wing, and Phantom really hurting for modern content. Yeah, ooh, K-Wing as well. And really hurting for anywhere near.
The Hawk, yeah.
The Hawk. Don't you dare. That was a trilogy of beautiful video games. I do think that they put the E-Wing in a Poe Dameron comic, though, of just like in a nostalgia vault or something of like a bunch of goofy ships.
It's already been released, but in a different faction. I don't see a reason to have the ARC 170 in Rebels anymore. Like, it's cool, but I don't know why they never re-release it.
Like, release a Rebel-specific version?
Yeah, like,
why?
They already have the cards in the conversion kit, which, sure, you're forcing people to buy the conversion kit to get those cards, but, like, I don't see a reason to them to... Like, that is the least re-release ship, I think, now I think about it. All the pilots are unique. They're not very played, and I don't think FFG, when doing points updates, have really given any real incentive for people to like, yeah, you should fly the ARC 170 in Rebels. They're probably like, no, you should fly the ARC 170 in Republic.
Yeah.
So I think that one, because it's already predominant and more iconic in another faction, is... Yeah, I actually convinced myself the ARC 170 Rebels is going to be the least likely ship to be re-released. I don't know if that's a cop-out because it's already there.
That's actually really smart. The Rebel ARC. Vams, what do you think about the formats, though?
Format discussion on that point. At first, like, I do like the idea because... At first, but I get your point that it may. The one thing I'm trying to figure out is like extended hyperspace. As much as I don't want it to divide the player base on a lot of people divide on a debate level, like which one's better, and I even get in those discussions because I'm personally a pro hyperspace person. I'll play in an extended event, but I'll likely more enjoy playing in a hyperspace event. But at the same time, like, I don't want to have to make it feel like you have... there's no reason you can't do both, or there's no reason you couldn't have enough events to support all of them. I do like the idea of being able to help out the new player more, as much as I keep hearing the argument that, yeah, no, you can just go online and get whatever ship you want. Well, apparently it's really hard to get a hold of some of these ships nowadays. Like the old ones that just aren't re-released. K-Wings, gunboats, like, good luck. And not a lot of people want to go buy from... I mean, sure, some people are completely comfortable with eBay. Some people are not. Like, just people would rather buy the product. And I think I'd like to have a predominant format that supports it, but at the same time has that more freedom of allowing people to play everything that they've just bought on a competitive level without feeling like they're left out of the stuff that's only available via conversion kits in the cardboard and cards, but have to find a way to get the model. So I like it, but I can see the argument on what it could do to the player base and end up creating, when we could potentially get back to in-person play. Week 1 of the month it's hyperspace, week 2 it's standard, week 3 it's extended, and you just rotate that. And like, you might lose players each week instead of just, maybe you just say, hey, on casual nights, you just show up and you just agree with your opponent what format you want to play. I don't know. Because I'm trying to think, ideally this standard format, what Igneous is proposing, should be more accessible to the casual player. Well, if it's towards the casual player, that means you're looking at casual night play. And how do you maintain that audience? Because generally I do see most casual night people enjoy extended because they want to fly anything they want to enjoy. Completely understandable. I also know people who want to enjoy hyperspace. So I've tried to mix that in as best I could when I did help my store run and organize what formats would be best for each nights of the month. Flipping in the standard format, I would just purely have to put a poll up to my community and be like, what do they want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And just go from there.
Marcel, what are your thoughts?
How come I'm the one that's always like way off what you guys are thinking?
I mean, why would I have 4 people on the show that all think the exact same way? That's fine.
The point is to have different opinions.
It's got to be the beard. I'm still thinking it's got to be the beard. Probably the beard's making me lose perspective. Maybe I hate the idea. Like I would completely hate it. I get what he's saying, but yeah, like hyperspace. I think even hyperspace was a little bit of a stretch, but I get it. You want to give somebody like list building challenges, and you want to shake it up and have a separate format. I get that, and I also understand like extended. It might be hard to get certain cards and things like that. It might appear like a pay to win, but there's enough stuff out there that it's really not. I mean, especially the new stuff tends to always be costed and more competitive than the older stuff for the most part. I even go back to like when I started. The big cards that were important were the single cards that you had to get from the epic ships. Like the C-3PO, the Emperor Palpatine. You had to buy the big things, and I remember I bought it back then. I bought it, and then I stripped the non-epic play stuff out of it, and then I sold the rest at a discount. So I don't get to play with everything that everybody else gets to play with. It feels unfair. This time it's maybe not so much for price than for just accessibility. But at the end of the day, that's part of the game. It's not really pay to win. It's you play with what you got, and you build up your squad as you get more involved. And just from a health of the game financially, especially right now that they're closing one and moving to the other one, and obviously making moves to try to save money. Even back then, if you think about it, I bought epic ships because I wanted those 2 or 3 cards that were in there that were important. And I think 80% of the competitive players did the same. Like they bought those things, or either they went to somebody who bought it and did that and sold it to them on eBay. If there's no gunboats available, if there's no K-Wings available, what you see is like, oh, there's a problem. There's no gunboats available. I see as an opportunity. Hey, there's a demand for gunboats. Go make a run. Go make some money. Go make you go make some more of these and Atomic Mass Games. Go reproduce another batch and make some money and sell more of these things. So, I just don't like the idea, especially the way that it was phrased. And again, not to attack the person who wrote it, but the way they were saying that extended gets to be like the casual at home in your chip and beer game with your family at home, or casual night on a league night. I think most people got really upset with hyperspace with the fact that they said, I invested in this game already. I bought these ships already. Mm-hmm. And you're telling me I can't play with them in a competitive tournament? Like, Like, I bought this and I can't use it now. I have to go home and play with my kids, or I have to go and play casual. I can't use the ship that I bought at Worlds or at the at the top of. So that's my perspective, and maybe it comes across as like the ultra competitive side versus the more casual perspective. But I don't know. That's just my view. I think additional formats, like additional play styles, Aces High and these, more side event type events, kind of like what FFG did at Worlds, the last Worlds that we had, where they had side events running and they had different formats, and then they had other things to just add a little bit of flavor, add some storytelling, all that. I love that idea, but for the base play of the game, I think just having a free-for-all, which is extended, and a free-for-all but with list building challenges, which is hyperspace, is all you really need.
All right. So I want to let's keep going down this road a little bit, because Marcel, I also don't like the idea. I also I'm not a fan of the idea of adding another format, only because I've done a lot of experimentation, and I'm gonna here's your memeable word, everybody. I've done a lot of probing with the community just to kind of get the feel for what is it in general that they like. Because I'm just thinking for AMG as a business, or me as a tournament organizer, any tournament organizer, it's finding what is the thing that the most amount of people are willing to do together, right? Because you want participation. And as we add more variations, that's where you get people like, well, I don't like that. That's dumb. I'm out. But there might be, where's the middle ground? And what I have found for most people is that extended has become that middle ground, because while yes, X-Wing does need new players to continue to grow, and there are some things that people can't get. One of the things that has happened is the new release ships, there's a lot of them that are really competitive. Yes, are there some things that have been competitive that have not been accessible to new players? Some, but we have all the data in the world to show that, look, there are these ships that you can buy right now that are really good. Boba Fett has been one of the best pilots throughout 2nd edition, available to everybody. Soonterfell, available to everybody. Darth Vader, available to everybody. Like, you can build competitive lists with what has been released only in 2.0 and that are still good against things that are in extended. So for that reason, I like extended. Hyperspace, I think the list building challenge that hyperspace should be, I like that aspect of it. And I want to go through, and Ryan, I know you're a little bit more familiar with hyperspace than I am. This last round of hyperspace, did they include some non-2.0 released stuff into hyperspace yet?
No, I think in the article, I mean, I haven't actually made sure 100% by looking at the list, but I was pretty convinced when they put out the article about, like, hyperspace is going to stick with only released content from 2nd edition on. That's what they said, and I assume that's the case.
Right. So I think that it would be, over time, okay. And mind you, over time, you would hope that everything gets re-released. And that's a question that somebody asked in the chat. Didn't FFG say that they would release everything? Well, business models change at all times. They can flip that on a dime and say, well, because of X, Y, and Z, we're deciding not to reprint this. Like, I would take that promise as a idealism, as they would hope that they could release everything. But I think one thing they discovered very early is, I think that they printed too many of like I think they reprinted too many of the early ships, and you notice the reprints slowed down significantly this year because I don't think they were selling as much as they would. Well, of course they wouldn't sell because there's still stock of a lot of those ships. I can very quickly find TIE interceptors, a lot of the ships that they were re-releasing. I could find X-Wings of first edition on sale racks online. It's really easy to find that stuff still. And they went and reprinted it. And this is, of course, from not having all the data, from an outside perspective, it seems like they made like a normal production run of an item where they already had usable content, and people like us, the competitive players who've been playing since before second edition existed, we had no reason to buy an X-Wing with wings that open and close outside of, all right, that's neat, I'll get one of them. Or I got it already in the Saul's Renegade pack when I bought it in first edition. And that's cool, but I don't have to have it. All right?
Yeah, and so I looked up, I believe the last re-releases were the YV666, the TIE Defender, and the RZ-1 Rebel A-Wing.
There you go. And I know I was at the store last week, and there's a bunch of Defenders on the shelf just sitting there because they're again fairly easy to find. The most desired one is the red one. That one's hard to find. The one that they released that was red, the Captain Ryad one. But yeah, interesting discussion. Thank you for submitting that question. I think that could be an episode all on its own. But of course, right now we have hyperspace and we have extended. So thank you for the question. Let's jump into our lists of the week. I want to remind you guys that you can submit your list of the week requests on our Discord, and we are keeping I will say I'm a week behind, but we are keeping a record of the list of the week and the suggested changes to that on our Discord as well, so you guys can go ahead and keep track there. I'm hoping to update everything tonight because I do have some time tonight. But let's jump into it. We got 3 beautiful gentlemen here and 3 awesome lists. Any volunteer to go first?
I'm ready with mine.
All right, so Will is going to take our Scum list of the week. Go ahead, take the wheel, Will.
All right, let me go back up to it here. So the introduction comes from Salska. Says, I'm finally watching through Rebels, and the first appearance of Ketsu Onyo inspired me to work on this list. They are wondering what to do with the extra 4 points, what to really move and drop. As well, it makes a note they were putting concussion bombs on there as well for a full 200, but I haven't dropped a single one, probably because I might be too scared of them just dropping out of you uncontrollably. So the list goes as Iman Azami, that's the fire spray with the fun bomb drops with thermal detonators, Cad Bane crew, and Anadrasta. Ketsu Onyo with Kara crew, Shadowcaster title, and some mining guild surveyors, utilizing the new Marg Solb closure when they fly through obstacles. So the first thing that strikes me is Cad Bane. I don't really know what to make with that. I mean, I think Iman's, if anybody, the person to be putting Cad Bane on. I would wonder in practice how much that was used. If you used it every time you bomb dropped. If it is important, please keep it on. But how I'm imagining Iman flying does not need Cad Bane at all. So that's the first thing we're getting rid of for a swap. And I really think...
Wait. Rules question first before you make that decision. Cad Bane, put it back up again. I just have a rules question first.
Oh, because it's the Death Rain launching
Yeah, so it says
situation. Is
after
that
you
what it
drop or
is?
launch a device, you may perform a red. So you can drop one 3 to one side. Thermal lets you drop another one, and then you using a different template. Then
Right,
you
3 straight.
boost. So you drop one, you boost, and then you drop another.
Yeah, I mean, they've ruled that thermal detonators is technically 2 instances of drop. The keyword drop. So it should work. I think like what you're thinking is bubble bomb. Is that the point of Cad Bane?
I would
on
imagine
Emo?
that's the point on this one is to be able to drop, boost, drop, and then you clear it with a blue.
I mean,
guess.
That's a lot of range. I'm not sure that stressing Iman for the range is worth it. Maybe.
No,
I
because
mean,
it
I
happens
think
at system phase, so you get to clear it with your maneuver.
I mean,
Right.
I state again. I'm not sure that stressing him makes it worth it. You know, being forced to the fire sprays blues. Right. You got the straights and the one bank. 1, 2, 3 straight and one bank.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I haven't put Iman on the board, but I still don't think that you're going to be doing a lot of bomb dropping. I completely agree with that. But then, like, once your bombs run out, you got to fly away and reload them or whatever. I think that what is cool about Iman is the old beaver tail, the beaver slap. And I think that those last points need to be some sort of mine. Normally reach for proximity mines. Give the hard 2 a little how you do with the mine. Right now, Connor Nets, very affordable at 3 points. Very hot right now. That does fit in. If you're looking for no change or questioning what to do instead of those concussions, definitely go with the Connor. If Cad Bane hasn't been working out for you, I would reach for those proxy mines, and I think that they add a lot of utility and basically a no-go zone for a lot of ships. Like anywhere behind Iman is a bad idea because you're just going to eat one of those proxy mines. But that's a little boring, and you know me, I like to go all out. So if I was going to fly this, I would drop both of those. Both of the TIE fighters. Don't need them. We need someone to assist Iman in his bombing. And his name's Captain Nim. So we're going to get Nim with an extremely affordable dorsal turret and bomblet generator. And we're going to, I think we end up going back to those Connor nets as well. Connor nets, no Cad Bane. I lost in my own list built in here.
For $199.
Yeah, drop the Cad Bane. You can drop the drop the dorsal turret, Cad Bane. Like I said, that's up to you. If you in your playtesting, Cad Bane is what's up. I would like to see Cad Bane on the board.
Do you
But
need
I'm
Kira?
not gonna do it. What's up?
I said if you're trying to get another bomb in there, do you need Kira in there?
Yeah, Kira's so good, man. Ketsu's large base, so big. So I think Kira's one of the best upgrades. Because Ketsu's going to be taking evades and focuses most of the time, anyways. Doesn't really need to target lock. So a nice target lock on a big old rock that she's going to try to utilize here. Nim in this list is really just to be another beat stick out there, just shooting four dice in range 1, hopefully on a tractor beamed person, a la Ketsu's title. Do a little bomb drop in his zone. Trust me, there's a reason bomblets went down to 2. Nobody was using them. They're okay. They're not great, but they're Nim's signature bomb. So that's how I would fly it. Gotta have those mines. So the list ends up Iman as a meme, thermal detonators, Connor Nets, and Andrasta. Katsu Onyo with Kira and Shadowcaster. I do like that stripped down build, by the way. I think that's perfect. And then Captain Nim with Dorsal, Turret, and Bomblet Generator.
All right, fantastic. We'll go ahead and copy this over for our records. Wrong thing. Ryan, go ahead next. You have our Rebel list today.
Yep. So, according to the prompt here from Backwards Ham 1 says, "Hello GSP, I'm a Rebel player from back in the day. Recently been having fun with the new toys, and I remembered I love playing Alphabet Squadron lists. People who aren't familiar with Alphabet Squadron, that is the new book series that focuses on the multiple lettered wings of the Rebel Alliance. With the points dropped for X-Wings and A-Wings, I figured I would give it another shot. I would love any suggestions." So, starting off with Braylon Strom with Synced Laser Cannon and Stabilized S-Foils, Jake Farrell with Thread Tracers, and Garvin with just the S-Foils, and then Cassian Andor with Leia and the Pivot Wing title. Solid base for sure. I think I'm still not big on the cannoned B-Wing with S-Foils. I think there's better usage of points. I think the pilots themselves in this list, I don't see a reason to change. I like everything that it started out with. The base is solid. They're all good named pilot ships. It's just, what do we do with the extra points? To buy extra points, so let's just start with taking out the Synced Laser Cannon and the Stabilized S-Foils. It leaves us with 8 points. I do like Jake with Thread Tracers. When I was first working with this list, I considered getting rid of them and then upgrading Garvin to Wedge. But I just think the Wedge is such an easy target, even though he's I6 and has the ability to move last and stuff, but he's still just a really punchy jouster in the baseline of it. With what's available in this list, I want to have Cassian being able to still provide good fire and not just like feel like he has to coordinate, because Jake really does like to make sure his focus is given to Braylon when necessary, or Garvin, and having that flexibility of either one, but the potential that you don't need to do it to both every turn, because I always feel like Wedge has to have someone give him another token for better efficiency for him. So I think with those last 8 points, since there's no one shooting above I4, and you can still take advantage of Jake's Thread Tracers when you're shooting against maybe opposing ships with higher initiative to get Garvin or everyone locks, I think Garvin could actually take advantage of a plasma torpedo, where you can strip those shields, feel like it could be similar math to a 4 dice shot at range 2 to 3 because of how plasma torpedoes work with the auto shield damage as long as one of them hits. And then if Garvin has the initiative, he could be past a focus from Jake, or if I4 is higher than most of the opposing ships you're targeting, he could take the target lock and end up getting past a focus by Jake and not need Jake to use the Thread Tracers. And Braylon, moving at the same initiative, can use that focus linked barrel roll to get all the mods he needs. But if you're going up against an opposing list that has most ships that are higher initiative, you have that threat of the Thread Tracers with Garvin if he doesn't have the lock range to still threaten those plasma torpedoes, and he's still shooting 3 dice. And I think just having better quality shots spread throughout and not having likely 2 single modded shots with the or 1 double modded, 1 single modded from the Synced Laser Cannon that really won't add too much to Braylon. I mean, sure, it's 2 shots, but I think the plasma torpedo punch backed up by the Thread Tracers is probably a better way to go. Braylon can already generate the mods he needs. Cassian's fine with Leia. Leia's always good in these type of situations, in these lists. So 1 point bid. I'd leave it at that.
All right. So I've got, let me see which one's the original. Yeah, this one. So this list came from Steelwater 6942. He says, I want to try this out. Feels like it can do some work in the long run. My only question is Obi-Wan and the Aether Sprite, or move him to the Actus. I'm guessing that's the ETA. Actus Cactus. And the list is Obi-Wan with the Delta 7B title, nothing else. Then you have Anakin Skywalker in the ETA with Extreme Maneuvers, which is like the Daredevil, Force Daredevil, and a shield upgrade. And then you have Ayla Secura, or Ayla Secura, with Extreme Maneuvers and shield upgrade as well. So no talents or anything else on them. So they were just doing some daredeviling. And yeah, just he's banking on the 655. Comes in at 200 points, so not a bid. So you're hoping to just set up kill boxes and do things like that. So what I like about it is 655. What I don't like about it is not having a bid at 655, because there's so many other 655s out there, and especially the ETAs rely so heavily. They rely heavily on getting bullseyes, and if you don't have the initiative, you're not going to be lining up those bullseyes. So let's see if we can make this work a little bit differently. But he trying to keep most of this intact. So let's start off with getting rid of those extreme maneuvers. Daredevil works best when you're moving last. He's not moving last, or at least won't be in most situations. So let's get rid of those extreme maneuvers and those shield upgrades. Fly better. Don't get shot.
All right, so that leaves you with 20 points.
Ooh, that's a whole lot of points. So that Ayla Secura was 63 points at Initiative 5. I think there's a better ship at that same cost. So we're going to take Ayla off. Was originally 63. We're just going to take her off and put in Rick Ole, which is another Initiative 5. Okay, and we're going to add, he likes Daredevil, so let's throw Daredevil in there. Distress Daredevil. Then Advanced Sensors. Make sure that stays alive. And the R2 Astromech. All right, and that leaves you, where are we at? How many points are we at?
187.
All right, let's also add, now with this you got a bid, but we can add Predator on Anakin just to make sure that he has some mods. At 189, you'll be winning most bids in, you'll be winning most bids at 189. So you'll be able to line up those bullseyes a little bit easier. You have Rick Ole, which stays alive for a long time. And you have, basically the bid is what, a bid at Initiative 5 and 6 is better than an extra shield. And Rick Ole will stay alive forever. Obi-Wan Kenobi, protect them. And Anakin should be able to do some work. But by you having a 200-point list, it kind of tells me that you really don't care about the bid. So let's...
I mean, but here's a question, though. Maybe they might not be aware of the importance of the bid. That's not necessarily saying that they, because they didn't say that they don't care about bidding. They're just submitting a 200-point list.
Yeah. So I would leave it like this. If I was flying it, I would leave it like this at 189 with Obi, Anakin, Predator, and then a Rick that Rick will never die. So you've got 60. That's an extra 11 points. You've got 73 points that'll be on the table till the end of the game. However, again, if you don't care about a bid, that's how I would fly it. But if you don't care about a bid, I would go ahead and throw R2D2 on Obi-Wan Kenobi as well. and just make sure that all those points on Obi, R2D2. I love R2D2 because you especially on a 3 attack ship, because you don't have to completely disengage anymore. You can just take the deplete token, recharge, and complete your maneuver, and you're fine. You can still keep your gun on target. Also, you don't have to worry about bombs. Mines still suck, but you don't have to worry about bombs. And just get that bomb out of the way, and just move and do what you need to do. So you can play it like this. This will get you a lot further than the other version. Basically, Anakin, the way you had him with the shield upgrade, kind of tankier, but this way Anakin is not as tanky. They'll probably be the one you kill first, but your Obi-Wan and your Rick only have regen. They'll stay alive for a long time, and Anakin is cheap enough to where after they kill him, they killed essentially the cheapest thing on your list. But if you're taking it to a tournament, I would consider dropping the R2D2 and just going with a heavy bid.
All right, so I do want to bring up that there was some disagreements in the chat about your choice to get rid of Ayla versus Rick. I found it kind of interesting, which is why I brought it up. Did you?
Yeah, but it's an easy one to settle. The chat is wrong and I am right. That's the Star Slinger approach to discussions.
But what if I was in the chat too?
Then you're wrong.
Oh no. All right. Well, those are our lists of the week. Thank you, everybody who submitted them. Remember, you can take a look at those on our Discord and make sure to make submissions there. One thing that I do try to do is I try to find ones that are a little bit different. If you're just copying and pasting a meta list, that's usually not going to get our attention there. But honestly, if you have questions about your list or you think it's something that you think could be interesting or good, go ahead, present it to us. Like we really do want to see what you guys are cooking up at home right now in your guys' local tournaments, or if there are special formats that you're playing in a special format, let us know what the format is and then the list that you got, and we'll do our best to tackle that. We got you there. Now, I know that we had guests. You see, this is one of the reasons why I like having guests, but at the same time I don't, because I felt like I didn't get enough Will, Marcel, and Ryan in my life. Did you guys have a good week?
I had a good weekend. My week just started, Dion.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Theoretically, our podcast episode
since last
goes on Monday.
I know. I'm Justin, yeah.
Alrighty. You guys start my week. This is when my week begins. All right. You matter to me. All right, everybody. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation with our guests. I know that it was something very different than usual, a little bit out on a limb. We'll see how y'all react to it, whether we'll have more guests or not. It was a little bit out there. I will admit it, but again, I think it's important. I think we can get some really cool data, and we'll see how things go. You guys have any shout outs that you want to give before we sound out for the night? Will, you got anything?
I'm thinking about playing in some sort of Bill and Ted's Excellent X-Wing Adventure Tournament. I've seen him posting around. It's got a Discord channel set up. It's apparently going to go old school and mix First Order Empire and Resistance and Rebels, creating a who knows what kind of meta. Should be interesting because I have no idea what is even possible between those things. I haven't thought about that stuff, in quite a while, years now, putting Darth Vader and Kylo together. So take a look for that. Like I said, it's Bill and Ted's excellent X-Wing Adventure Tournament.
Cool. Marcel?
Sorry, I was in and out. What? What are we
Do you have
doing?
any shout-outs before we go?
I shout out everyone. Shout out to everyone. Shout out to everyone who agrees with me. To everyone who doesn't, you're wrong.
And Ryan?
Shout out to Greg and Jonathan who came on. Maybe we didn't get a chance to really, do like a post discussion, but I think that is in a coming episode. So look forward to that in the future when the research is done. Appreciate them putting together that survey. Very well done. And hopefully the audience enjoys a little bit of time as people want to know more about you.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's going to be a much easier discussion once we have the data to talk about it, because they had to dance around a couple of things, right? Like they don't want to influence our answers, which I get that from an academia standpoint. So it was a little bit hard to talk about. We kind of talked around the subject, but I really suggest you guys take that survey, because it's gonna make that episode when we get to talk about that data with them way more interesting. So exclamation point survey in the chat if you're watching live, or click the link in the description below. Before we go out, I want to remind you guys that today our podcast was brought to you by manscaped.com, and it is officially Mrs. GSP approved. The Mrs. GSP approved emote is now in the Twitch chat. All right, so you guys can have some fun with that. And thanks again for everybody who listened. Be smart, be safe, and if you are doing holiday stuff, have fun. Enjoy that time that you have with those special people around you. I just wrote the holiday quick tips episode, as we've done yearly for the last few weeks, so you guys should have some fun with that. And by the way, this is I guess technically the podcast is over, but a couple of exciting things are happening over the next couple of months. We will be I'm going to have access to a new space for the podcast, okay, here fairly soon, and have some other spaces available to me for different recording things and shooting videos for you guys. And one thing that we need to do when I have access to my new streaming space is we got to design the space. We got to figure out what you guys want to see, because I'm actually going to have a little bit more space for you guys, and who knows what fun things that that's going to be able to open up. We're actually going to have dedicated space for a physical setup table. That's going to be the official GSP streaming table. And once we get post-COVID, I'm going to be able to do things like have Marcel, Ryan, and Will, hang out for a weekend, and we can maybe shoot something for you guys, or have in-house games at the GSP headquarters and be able to shoot video for you guys. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting, and we'll see what comes of it. So thanks for watching, everybody. Be smart, be safe, and remember, Gold Squadron loves you, and we're out.